Thank you everyone here for joining us today for this talk. I'm here with Jens Larssen, and he is the founder of 8a.nu, which is a climbing website and community that hardly needs an introduction, but in case you haven't been there, it's a website where you can log different ascents. There's see climbing news, there's a forum there, it's a whole community on there. So today we're excited to talk about some climbing.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's always nice to talk about my dearest subject in my life.
Yeah. So you're based in Sweden, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm based in Göteborg in the west coast of Sweden. And I often say that Göteborg is the city in Europe closest to good climbing.
Okay. Yeah. And so, how's the pandemic been for you? Haven't really had lockdowns there, right?
No, gyms are open and the school are open and so on, but now it seems like this was a mistake because we are among the worst countries in the world, and actually my whole family have got it, but I didn't get it, even if we were isolated for like 2-3 weeks in the house here. So everything is good, and I'm going for that something. I'm testing it tomorrow to see if I have had it anyhow, even if I didn't have any effect on me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. You're still healthy. And have you been able to climb outside, or it's too cold at this time of year in the winter?
I'm climbing or developing new routes or boulders every day. Or even today, I was out with my 10-year-old, and we were out brushing some new boulders just like 200 meters from our house. It's I can develop routes and boulders for a long period. Just the last, like, say 2 years, I've maybe put up like 50-60 bolted and trad climbs just around the neighborhood here. So that's my passion.
Yeah, plenty to keep you busy then, right in your backyard.
Yeah.
Well, for everyone who might just be joining now here, I'm sitting here with Jens Larssen, and we're here talking about climbing in 8a.nu. He is the founder and the editor-in-chief of 8a, and we're going to dive into this here. So, Jens, do you want to tell us where the idea for the website came from? Because it's been around for a long time now.
Yeah, it was back in '99. I was the junior national coach, and I was also putting up a lot of routes. So initially, I just created a blog to talk about training and talk about all the new routes. And then I had a friend, Leif, who we invented the scorecard like 6 months later, and then it just took off. It was like dramatic to see, and to see all the big stars joining in, and I guess within a year or so it was quite known all around the world. And and for the last 20 years it has been so to say my passion and my job to create interaction in the climbing world, which is what I do for a daily business, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, so 1999, that's the early days of the internet for this type of thing. I mean, that's pre-Facebook and MySpace and Strava and all of those websites. What was it like? Did you create it from scratch, the website, originally?
No, I had a webmaster who is really into this kind of stuff. So I was not involved so much in that part of the web design and so on. And but actually, I mean, we were ahead also with this notifications where you have friends, as you still can have. You can be a friend with another guy, and then automatically you will get updated. And you can also send messages and so on. So yeah, from that perspective, and that was my friend's idea from the beginning. I'm more into climbing, but we developed it somewhat together, and it just took off very quickly there, as I said.
And so how did you expand it? It was kind of your local area at first, and then did you go broader within Sweden or all to Europe? Like kind of what was the evolution of the site?
I guess actually in the first, it was local. And then when we created the scorecard, we said that, okay, let's go global. And then I did know that this Björn Pool, he had like a newsletter. And I just asked him, do you want to be part of the 8A team? And then, we sent out the messages, and at that time I often did go out to competitions, like in the junior competitions, but also in the World Cups and so on. And basically the idea to have a logbook or so on is kind of natural for many, and that made it successful, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how big was the audience or the users when you first started it, and how quickly did it grow?
I don't know exactly. In the beginning, it was just for the Göteborg area. So it was just for my friends with 50 guys or so. And I guess that after 1 year after we have started the global and the scorecard and so on, I think we were among the biggest sport climbing websites almost immediately, actually.
Okay.
So, but I don't have any correct numbers actually there. I can't give you an estimation of how big we grow in the beginning, but it was like, we were invited to these Petzl rock trips and the World Cups, and it whatever we did, and when we were everyone liked the idea, so to say. So then as I said, maybe 1 or 2 years, and we were among the biggest climbing websites in the world.
Okay.
Sport climbing websites.
Yeah. Where's the name 8A come from? Why'd you decide on that?
Actually, I remember I was I came up with a name one night. I woke up and wow, that's a great name. The figure 8 knot, and 8A is like at least for most in Europe, the magical grade, and it's quick and so on. So we found it, and but 8a.com was not available, so we had to go for 8a.nu. But at that time, as it was just for 50 or 100 persons, we didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's super easy to remember and type in and pull up the website.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anything surprised you over the years? Did you expect it to ever become this?
No, of course not. Of course not. But I mean, it took maybe 1 year. Then I saw all these guys, Ramonette, and all these celebrities, they joined up, and I understood that this is something that possibly I could have as a job. Previously, or at that time, I was working also mainly in Africa for the World Bank and for different aid societies, and mainly in Sweden for the development aid program. So I was traveling a lot, and of course in the beginning we just did it, and we didn't have any banners or anything like that. But then after like a couple of years, it did grow, and I quit my other job, and I since then I have just been working with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that decision like for you? Because you had a full-time job, obviously, and this was kind of like a hobby.
Yeah.
When did you kind of figure out and decide this could be my career, and what made you decide to switch over?
It just came. We tried something, and gradually it, it, we increased the number of banners and so on. And yeah, at that time I was also a bit fed up with that, that traveling to Africa and so on. And yeah, I took a bit of a chance there, because in the beginning, of course, we didn't have any income, so to say, even if I saw it growing. But I have always been a low budget guy also. So, and if I could go climbing, which I was obsessed about already at that time, I was willing to have this different life. And yeah, so it came gradually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that a scary decision at first to kind of to jump into this website full time that, you know, wasn't really generating a huge source of income at first?
No, as it was a hobby. It was not that I quit my other job. I could go back to that, but it so it just came gradually. I started doing my hobby thing and started to travel more, go more to Spain, Calymnos, all these things, and it was yeah, it was in the beginning of the era, and I didn't know what to expect. I started to go to these trade fair shows and so on, and you know, I didn't know what to expect and so on. But yeah, it has been maybe 15, 16 years I have had this as my full-time job, and making money out of it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess over the years, have you seen any interesting trends in climbing? Obviously, you have a lot of data here, and climbers are plugging in their ascents here. Are climbers getting stronger in general? They climbing harder and harder climbs.
Yeah, that's kind of easy to measure, actually. And in the beginning, I kept track of that, but now the development, especially this year, when it comes to the number of guys doing 9As, you know, I have more or less of a system. What kind of news? What's the level I report on? And nowadays I don't even report all the 9A routes, and I don't report for the girls 8C or so, but I have had to step up there, because the number of climbers and the number of everything is growing. We are just in the early stage of how good the climbing community is when it comes to grades and so on. So this has been yeah, you know, what we consider a big headline 50 years ago, that would not made it to the forum today, it seems.
Yeah, it's interesting that the bar of climbing has gone up so much,
Yeah.
but also kind of the average climber has gone up as well.
Yeah.
Hey, you said do you see that trend with female climbers too? Because obviously that's a big growth area in climbing.
Even stronger, and this is something I really like. You know, I often say that when it comes to equality between gender, there is no other sport, physical sport, that come close to sport climbing. I mean, if you would rank the best, and I will do that also later on this year in December, the best Laura Rogora, her tick list, if you compare it to the best guys in the world 2020, she's easily will make it to the top 10. So I mean, there's no other sport in the world where you can have a female being among the top 10 best athletes. And I think this will just go on, and this is something I really enjoy. And I enjoy that climbing is in comparison to many other sports, it's so great that you can also keep on pushing grades when you are 50 above. Even the kids can perform. So I mean, you have you can be a world-class climber from when you are like 10 years old or 11 years old until you are like 50 or so, and that's also unique, and that's also part of why climbing is so nice to be part of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a lifelong sport.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so for that, the gender gap in climbing, do you see that it's closed a lot in sport climbing? Is it still there a little bit more in bouldering? That's more, involved with pure power and strength.
Yeah, in bouldering it seems like yeah, there you have the gap. You still have the gap, and I think also it possibly it can be related to the length of the climbers in the centimeters and so on. That sometimes you don't have that advantage if being 160 or so on. But if you're a smaller female, you can squeeze in more fingers into a 2-finger pocket, for example. But in bouldering, I think it will be harder for them to come up. But even as it stands, they are pretty close to being comparable to the best male, I think.
Okay, yeah. Have you seen any other trends? Because people log in certain areas too. So have you seen climbing areas become very popular and then fade away, or anything about locations?
Yeah, this year it's like it is, but previously Kalymnos was of course the number one climbing destination. But I think this year we have seen more development locally. You have to develop your local area, and but I mean the biggest trend is of course that we have so many more gyms. So in general, the climbers are physically much stronger. And there is also a trend that we train more in a structural way. We follow a program and so on, and becoming more like a mainstream sport. But at the same time, I always try to say that there are different approaches that could be equally successful. So being a junior coach, for example, I do not think that we should tell everyone to follow that program. I mean, if Chris Sharma would have been 10 years now, he might have stopped climbing if he had some coaches telling him that, okay, now today it's Monday and you should climb 200 meters up and down on a route 6A, and then you should go for this and that and so on. And this is something also that I think that it's very individual, that you can be the best in your sport, and there are numbers of different approaches. And I'm a bit afraid that the strength-based training is the focus is too much there, especially for the teenagers, instead of enjoying the full spectrum of also going out climbing. And this is something I can even see in my neighborhood, that many of the best so-called competitions climbers, they stop climbing them because it's also, if you're a competition climber and then you have reached your limit and then you start climbing outdoors, and you understand that, wow, I'm not so good as the other guys and as the old school guys. And that's of course pretty hard. So I always think that you should have you should stand on both legs here in order to become a very good climber. And as Sharma and Ondra and Megos, all these show, is that you have to enjoy and love also outdoor climbing. And I think this is important in the long run.
Yeah, that makes sense. As more and more climbers come up to the gyms and it becomes more of a mainstream sport, you see a lot more pressure to perform
Yeah,
versus
yeah,
people in it for the love of the sport. So
yeah.
it makes sense that there'd be burnout later on when these people their heart's not in the right spot here.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen during the pandemic here, has there been a decrease of people logging climbs, or has it been about the same across the world?
I think it has been at least the same, actually. And I think that if we compare how the climbers have performed outdoors, I think it's at least as what we have seen the last years, actually. Maybe we will not have that peak in December as we normally have when the competitions climbers have stopped, because now it seems like it's harder to get to Spain and to other countries. But in general, I would say that this year have been maybe the record year when it comes to high performance.
Okay.
Even if we have been in lockdown, I'm not fully, but it has been a lot of guys doing hard stuff this year.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Do you think that because there's no competitions, a lot of the people, the top climbers who would be traveling for the competitions and training just for that are now outside working on their own projects?
Of course, and that's I'm chatting a lot with the best climbers, and that's one of the messages I have, and also I have a message that I don't know if I will do that hard, structured, systematic training this year, or if I will first see that my first ambition is to go out climbing. And so, yeah, everything is uncertain now, actually, and we don't know if there will be any competition at all next spring. I mean, we have the vaccine now, and of course that is what everyone is waiting for.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess you mentioned Klemnos is one of the popular climbing areas. What are some of the other top destinations that people are logging?
Yeah, of course there is. Yeah, I could go out just mentioning the top list here, but of course Fontainebleau is still the number one place in the world when it comes to bouldering. But other than that, we have, all the big centers here. Ticino is for bouldering also, and then of course Spain, around Lleida, like 2 hours west of Barcelona, is where people, which have become the most popular destinations if we measure by the number of ascents logged. Now I don't think that we will see so many more climbs logged from Spain, but Adamondra is still there, but it seems like most are located in their neighborhood, and then we have the weather situation in Europe during the winter, so that might decrease it a bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have demographic information about the website? Like where are most of your members from? Is it mostly centered in Europe, or do you have a large membership base in North America as well, and South America?
I think it's important also to say that the website is owned by Vertical Life now. Mm-hmm. It's an Italian company based just next to the border to Austria, in the Dolomites, and so when we talk about these numbers, it's always that we talk about it from the company perspective, because they are the biggest company, or we are the biggest company when it comes to logging indoor or logging gym routes also.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that?
Yeah.
Did you know that? Yeah. So I think that I guess we have like maybe 60-70% in Europe. I guess 20% in North America, and then rest is spread in other destinations in the world.
Okay.
But Europe is the base.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to Vertical Life, so they bought 8A.nu a couple years ago now.
Yeah. Is it like 3.5 years ago?
Okay.
Yeah. For me, running 8A as my personal thing here, and as it grows so big, it was almost impossible also, just from the web design and all these things, and it was actually not that fun to not to be with a group. And as most of the climbing and all the companies are located in Europe, further down in Austria and France and Italy, etc., they had a tremendous advantage for all this being in the epicenter of climbing. So I met this guy, the guy who had started Vertical Life, Matthias Pollig, and I invited him to come up to Sweden and climb. And he's as passionate like me. We started bolting routes as soon as he arrived to Sweden, and he's also had the same story, had been the guy who had put up most of the routes in his neighborhood and so on. And he quickly became a very good friend, and I thought it was a great opportunity for all the 8A members also to be part of this, which we in the long run will see. They have everything covered. They are working also for IFSC with a result system, and they are like I don't know, maybe 20-25 guys working full time there. So that was a very nice opportunity for me. And during the first year, we spent 3 months there in there with my family, climbing and skiing and in Dolomites. And in the end, I hope I will be living there.
Yeah.
So that turned out like a really great story. That still he's a very good friend of mine, and he has the same interest as me, that to create interaction in the climbing community. That's his goal also. Okay. So yeah.
Was that a tough decision for you at first, or after you created this from scratch and you grew the community over the years? So is it kind of hard to give up a piece of that, or for you was you thought it was the right time, and you were tired of doing it for so many years, so bring in some more manpower to help you out?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think most of all, it was from a personal, to see if we could get along, to see that if he had the same interest and philosophy like I have. And so the first year we spent I think we spent 3 months in their village or their small city. And after these 3 months, I was eager to be part of their team, actually. Mm-hmm. And it was, at that time, it was not a tough decision at all. I was just very happy, because if I would not have done it, it could also have been like problematic for me to come up to the next level when it comes to web design and apps and all these things that I am not that programming guy. I'm an obsessed climber that wants to bolt 3B as interested of doing that as bolting an 8C plus for Adam Mondrab when he comes and visit. So I have that interest, and so it was a great story. I'm very, very, very pleased that that I'm part of their team now.
Yeah. Yeah. So climbing eventually won. You wanted to free up some energy and to
Yeah.
go out and climb. So yeah, sounds like it was a good decision for you.
Yeah.
What are some of the changes? Obviously, the website has been redesigned since then. Do you have any new features on the website or any new projects that are going on currently too?
Yeah, I mean, basically in the beginning, or when I had it, you couldn't follow what's happening on your iPhone or your smartphones. So we didn't have that. So it was I mean, in the end there, the situation with the website, it was not modern, to say the least. It was many of the things were that had been programmed since 1999.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a simple decision to do that, actually. And I have had also a great Swedish webmaster, I should say that, for many years, but he also had a full-time job, children, and so on. So that was not a possibility either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you like to insert your opinions into the commentary a lot in there, and I actually found an old comment from 11 years ago or so. And you mentioned in that comment that as the site has grown, you felt that it was less appropriate for you to be always making your opinions in there. How has some of that changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it was like a blog,
Mm-hmm.
and that word didn't exist then. So I did run it like a blog, and I did say I gave out my personal opinion about everything, because that's what you're doing in a blog.
Mm-hmm.
And then I possibly was not aware of how big it was and how much impact my personal opinions had. So then I had to separate that, which was logical, of course. But at the same time, I think it's great to talk about all the ethical things and so on, and chipping and have the opinions about different things, and be part of developing safety and so on, and grading, of course. And that I have had the opportunity, but I'm placing that in a separate column now. So I try to run it as like a website with news, and then I often have and that's partly what I like the most, and partly of who I am in the way I think it's nice to be part of the development. I think it's nice to today I'm discussing chatting with one of the route setters in Moscow and in Tokyo about the future and so on, and it's not that I'm just asking him the questions. I tell him, what do you think about this idea? So I think this is also part of who I am. I think it's interesting to be part of the development of all these different things that comes with climbing, with ethical and chipping and access and safety. And I have had strong opinions about these things, and this is something I also I think it's interesting to be part of about that community, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you feel like the site, it was, when you said it was like a blog in the beginning, is very personal, and it's grown so large since then? Has it, in a sense, kind of become its own monster? And does it feel like it's escaped you a little bit because it's kind of its evolution just continued? Do you feel like that, or is it, exactly kind of how you want it to be?
Yeah, I think now it is like this is the logical development. I can run a blog on the right side, giving my opinions about different things and discuss and so on. But it was, of course, in a retro perspective, in some way I used it as my blog, but most of the people related to it as a website. Mm-hmm. So that was a mistake by me, of course, that it had grown so fast. So if I'm looking back at some of the news, so to say, I can say that okay, this is not just news, and it was not so good separated at that time. But and I think that even so, it's maybe not that regular news website very correctly, and my English is not so good and so on. So I think that today it is at the yeah, I think it would have been better if I would have been better in English, and if I would have had a guy checking my language and so on. But that might be in the future. But otherwise, I think it's in balance now with a website and all my personal comments on different subjects.
Yeah, so they both coexist with a little bit more separation now
than
they used to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. As somebody, you've been following the climbing news for so many years now. But where do you see climbing headed in the next 5, 10, 15 years from now?
Yeah, I think we have just seen the start of the boom when it comes to the gyms. I'm sure that after the pandemic here, we will see a tremendous continuous growth, of course, with climbing being in the Olympic. And I mean, climbing is such a good sport. I love it, and it's so good to take out your kids and go for traveling. So I think we will continue. The sport will be so much bigger in the few years to come. But of course, this will also create access problems and so on. But then we can take that as an opportunity to actually make climbers more aware of the environment and so on. And this should be part of the community even more. And I like all the initiative to clean up and to do stuff like this. And I think that the more climbers we have, the more guys we have that will fight for the outdoor and fight for the environment, and that could help Greta in the long run to create the possibility to survive on the globe for hundreds of years or so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you see your site and your position as the editor-in-chief? You're kind of in a position of responsibility here, because there are a lot of new climbers coming in who maybe they don't climb outside, they don't have that educational aspect.
Yeah.
And do you see yourself as somebody who could potentially be an educator for everybody coming up into climbing?
Yeah. Now, when you mention it, I recognize that, wow, maybe it was like 4 or 5 months since we last wrote a subject on this when it comes to access and all these things. And so, wow, yeah, now I have to do it one more time, because this is something I always talk about, access and how to behave and etc. and safety also, of course. Mm-hmm. And this is something I have articles prepared, and I'm writing about it often. But when you say it, yeah, this will come up next week again.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so I think we still got a little time here. I mean, is there anything else you want to add that you don't think we've talked about? Is there anything about climbing that has really surprised you that you didn't expect to come up as somebody who's a manager of this online community?
Yeah, I like to talk about safety.
Yeah.
I think that that it's good that we what I'm doing the last few years is that I'm putting up easy routes,
Mhm.
then I'm talking about 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B, etc. And which many thinks that this is totally insane. What are you doing? But I enjoy equally much when I see, like, when I see a girl doing her first lead on a 3B, and it took her 40 minutes
Mhm.
on a route which obviously you don't need more than 3-4 bolts. If yeah, but but for that girl, she was she liked all the maybe 15 balls I had put on that route. And I think, when she came down there and she just like, wow, this was the first route I ever made as a first, where I put the quick draws up myself, etc.
Mhm.
And for me, that was as rewarding as when Adam Ondra did an 8C plus first ascent on some balls I put up also near where I live. And I think that this is something we have to take into consideration, that first time when we went to Frankenjura like 20 years ago, it's just crazy to see at that time that you have to be brave and you have to risk your life, especially if you're not a good climber.
Mhm.
I mean, if you're doing an overhanging route in Sus and it's an 8A, then you can take a 10-meter fall. But if you fall 3-4 meters in a slab for C or whatever, then you can hurt yourself. And I think this is something which we have to think about more. And as we have all our local crags that was put up all for 30 years, if you just go to one of these routes, 6A or whatever, most of them are just crazy bolted, because anybody who makes a mistake, and then this is I get passionate about, because when we have all these guys coming out from the gym, so they have learned that once every 1.5 meter there is a bolt. So
Yeah.
if they read the guidebook and see that, okay, here's a nice 25-meter long 6A, they don't start thinking about how many bolts or safety or whatever. They just start climbing up there. And also this summer I saw some cases where I just like, stop, what are you doing? So I think this is something I think that everyone who is putting up new routes, we have to consider this, and at the same time we have to consider all the 10-year-old. My two kids, they are not good at climbing at all. They climb at the most 6A. And that's when I push them, but I don't do that. So they like to climb a route which is graded 5A, which is 7 meters long. And I think that if we take such things into consideration, there will be many more climbers that can enjoy the sport. Some years ago, I bolted a new small sector in the middle of the biggest climbing area in Göteborg, and people, they were really pissed about that. They thought this was totally meaningless. We have walked next to that crag, and nobody will ever climb there. It's so bad, so I have never bothered to even rappel down. This is the worst wall you ever seen. And 2-3 years later, this is the most popular crag in the whole West Coast, not just Göteborg.
Yeah.
It's the most popular crag, and the local clubs, they use it for having courses, all these things. And I think that to be part of seeing, like my father doing a 4A, I think I enjoy that. And this is something I think we have to think about in the future, to make it more accessible also for the average climber. I mean, my wife, she has been climbing for like 12-15 years, and she doesn't like to climb harder than 6A. So, but she thinks 5A is great, and it's just the way of approaching the sport. I enjoy climbing 5As as much as I like climbing 8As back in the days. And I think this is, for me, something I have. And you know, Kalymnos was the first destination that did this in a big scale. The success comes from that. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making climbing more accessible, and you know, the style of bolting's obviously changed from massive runouts through easy sections to be closer to a gym and more enjoyable for everyone.
And the easiest route in Kalymnos is called 1, 2, 3 ABC, and it's a 2A I bolted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So or maybe 3A, I don't know, but it's super easy, and I think this is anybody can go out in their backyard and find different things where you can climb. You know, as I told you, yesterday I went out with my 10-year-old in our backyard, and we found some new boulders. You know, and I have been living here 5 years, and they are 200 meters from my house, but because they are so easy. But once I just told my son, well, try this. Wow, but it's hard. I need to have my climbing shoes on. So it's you know, and this is style climbing. Now we have this. Wow, we can do this tomorrow. And you know, I'm a passionate developer of routes, and I hadn't found that. So you can understand how there's much room for development also for youngsters going out and playing with the blocks like in the kindergarten.
Yeah, just new people, new visions. It's all climbing. You know, things we overlooked in the past and said that's choss, that's not interesting, and you know, today it can be super fun. So it's all climbing. Yeah, I did see one comment scroll through on the screen here. Somebody asked why there's no V scale on 8A.NU. You use the font or European scale. Is that an option you would put in the future so you can toggle back and forth for all of us in America who don't understand the European grade system that well?
We had it in the old system, and I'm sure it is up in the list to be fixed. I thought it was actually that if you're American, that you can actually, that the V scale is what you will have at first sight. So I will check this up tonight, and if it's not, I will send them a message to say that this is high priority. Because of course, if you're used to have the V scale, then if you're logging the routes, this should be your first option. And that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you're talking about the logbook. Do you ever deal with trolls who come on here and they say they climb Perfecto Mundo and biography and bibliography and make fake accounts? Is that something that you've seen, and how do you moderate that?
Very, very seldom. Yeah, if so, we just delete these accounts, but it happens not so often. And yeah, there are so many social media things out there, so I guess these guys, they go to other forums to play around. Because so I don't see that as a problem. But of course, sometimes we have things like this, and we have almost done interviews. This has not happened the last 5, 6, 7 years, but I remember one case where we were close to actually spread the news about some climbers. But of course, I don't know if there's somebody faking something. And but what can happen, and what we have been told, is that you leave your computer on. You're at that internet cafe at Riley Beach, and then your friend comes up after you. Wow, this is a nice opportunity.
Yeah, this
So,
will be fun.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we have another question here.
yeah.
Says, any regrets from some of the changes that the site has created, such as grade chasing? Um, do you see, I guess, with the ranking system, that might be something we haven't talked about, the ranking game. Do you see people trying to chase grades, and it's all about the statistics versus going out and climbing aesthetically pleasing climbs for themselves?
Yeah, good question. And of course, there's also always positive and negative aspects on that. I mean, originally, why we put up the scorecard like this, that counting the top 10 and also giving a good feedback credit for on-site and flash, was that back at that time, we saw even more guys going for one climb. And I actually set it up like that because we went to El Chorro in Spain climbing, and I had some friends, they were just directly projecting one route, and I thought they were just like insane. And if you look at in the magazines are almost always focusing on who has done the hardest red point. So in one way, I set up the system in order to make people climb more routes. You can have a ranking who has the best score during the last month, as an example. So but we have actually thought about developing it a bit further in order to have people not just trying to do 10 routes, but having done like 100 routes or something like that. And but I think that when you have grade chasing, that's national thing for everyone. And I think that the biggest problem here, I would say that it's the indoor combination with follow my program, and it costs you $50 and then you will climb 3 grades harder, and then they lose the perspective of climbing. But I get your point, and I think that of course in some cases that has been the case, but from the whole perspective, I think that 8day have made people try more routes on sites actually, and flashes. I think I hope so, at least, because that was the plan from the beginning, to give a bigger bonus for on-site and flashes, and we plan to increase that in order to have people more focus on climbing. And when I'm in contact with youngsters, talking with their fathers and so on, and I always say that, okay, if you're just in it for the red point grade, I'm sorry, we don't report it. You have to be a climber going for on-sites, and that's my mantra. I'm always telling these guys and their parents that now it's time for you to go for on-site. Remember that on Adam Ondra, his focus was on-site in the beginning of his career, and it still is.
So for the scorecard, how does the point system work? You give a bonus for an on-site attempt versus a red point, and
you have to, if you climb 7A, and if you on-site the 7A, you get more points than if you red point the 7B plus.
Okay. Yeah.
Think about that. So that's one incentive for people to not just going for that red point project.
And it incorporates volume as well, right? So if somebody climbs 100 easy routes, they're going to be ranked higher than somebody who's climbed 5 or 10 harder routes.
Yeah, and that's also something we think, that you can rank in any way you want. You can rank based on the top 100 routes, top 10 routes, or whatever. And but we have actually just 2 weeks ago started to think about a new system where we will promote people climbing more and focusing more on sites and doing more routes versus just doing the 10 red points routes a year.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I think to wrap it up here, because we're running low on time. Is there anything else you want to add that you don't think we've touched on so far?
No. To increase the interaction in the climbing community. That's so anybody who has some ideas and have some questions or ethical whatever safety, or I'm interested, and anybody who's sending me messages and etc. I'm always responding in the best way I can, and I think that it's great to be part of the climbing community, and we have to be we have also the responsibility about the environment and all these things, and I think that over time we can have an impact on important subjects, what will happen to the globe and to the Mother Earth here, and I like to be part of that also.
Yeah, well, Jens, thank you very much for coming on here today and speaking with us. We appreciate it. And thanks to everybody else for listening along. I hope you learned something and enjoyed it. And tomorrow we will have, we'll have Jimmy Webb on here speaking with Liam Lonsdale. And then on Wednesday, we'll have Drew Ruana with Liam as well. So stay tuned all week long, and you'll see plenty more climbing here. So. All right, thanks again, and have a good evening over there.
Okay, thank you very much. It was
Thanks.
my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.